We need to have a conversation about Alfredo Di Stefano, a man so good that he played for 3 national teams and single-handedly turned Real Madrid into the biggest club on the planet. You'd think he was just a prolific goal scorer from the way that guys chat about him, but he was a complete total footballer. Look at these one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind stepovers that he was doing on pitches that looked like he was kicking ball on the moon. He had a delicate feather touch that would send guys shops to go and buy a light bulb or whatever guys used to buy back in the 1950s. Look at these Iniesta level back heels that he was doing so comfortably. Look at the R9 chest controls. I'm telling you, this man was too fake. He was 7 years older than Garrincha, by the way, so I don't want to hear any more excuses when Di Stefano was dribbling like this with footballs that were as heavy as dumbbells at the gym. In order to understand what made Alfredo so unique, you have to go right back to the beginning as always, so collect your pen and paper as I present to you the story of Alfredo Di Stefano, the original King of Real Madrid. Alfredo was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, July 1926, and he was immediately indoctrinated into the life of football as a result of his dad, who was a no-nonsense defender for River Plate back in the day. When his son was of age, he wrote a letter of recommendation to try and get Alfredo a trial at the club, and it's fair to say he passed his test with flying colours. However, it wasn't a smooth path to greatness from there, quite the opposite. He only played one time against their great rivals Huracan, who was so moved by his performance that day that they tried to steal him for themselves. As they say though, if you don't buy a ticket, you can't win the raffle. When Di Stefano realized there was far too much competition for him to break into the best team in the country, he decided to finally reply back to Huracan and join them on loan to prove his worth. As you can imagine, when he came up against River Plate, he was motivated more than ever before, and he ended up scoring within 10 seconds, the fastest goal ever recorded in the history of the Argentina Premier League. It's fair to say they realized their mistake and he was going nowhere the following season. Despite starting out on the wing, it didn't take long for him to cement a starting spot up front, where he'd begin cooking on high heat. This guy was like a one-man wrecking machine. At the age of just 21, he collected the Golden Boot in his first full season, with 28 goals in 32 games, almost a goal every single match. He was toying with defenders that had years of experience under their belt and treating them like it was nothing. Argentina immediately called him up to be the youngest player in their squad for the 1947 Copa America. Of course, they'd go on to win it, he'd score 6 goals in 7 games, and even grab a hat-trick against Colombia. Keep that Colombia game in mind, because we're going to revisit that one later in the lesson. This guy was just here to break all rules and defy all logic. When I say he could play any position, I mean it. Look how he drops deep to bring in his teammates, and then continues to go forward and create chances with his elite link-up play. This is the stuff that guys go crazy over Kane doing right now, except this guy used to even get back all the way and defend his own box. And just to put the icing on the cake, this brother played in goal against their biggest rivals Boca Juniors and managed to keep a clean sheet. What kind of freak of nature does that? But after 55 goals in 75 games, it was time for a new challenge. As a result of a footballer strike in Argentina, Alfredo made the decision to head over to Colombia, where he'd earn significantly more money at a club coincidentally called Millonarios. Unsurprisingly, he continued to demonstrate his bullet of a right foot, as well as his fox in the box movement and instincts, to pick up 100 goals in 111 games during his 4-year stint there. In fact, he was so elite that Colombia actually called him out to play for the national team despite him not having a Colombian passport, no citizenship, and no family members from anywhere in Colombia. Unfortunately, the Colombian league and the federation as a whole wasn't really recognized by FIFA, so many people delete these records when listing his accolades and revoke the 3 titles he earned there. Argentina even went so far as to ban him from playing for the national team upon his return. In 1952, there was now a bidding war between the classical rivals Barcelona and Real Madrid to try and acquire his signature. But as the Colombian league still weren't licensed, there were some dodgy dealings that meant that River Plate still owned his rights, and a FIFA rep had to intervene to come to the compromise that Real Madrid would get him for 1 year, and then in the following year Barcelona could take up the option to sign him. Barcelona stupidly decided to sell the rights to their part of the agreement, and the rest, as they say, was history. In his first season at Madrid, he scored 27 goals in 28 games. This was the definition of putting a team on his back. So much so that Madrid were happily paying him 40% of their entire revenue each year. An unprecedented move back then. But when you see him controlling goal kicks launched into the sky like this so smoothly, you can understand why. The Madrid we know today is not the same as what it was back then. Di Stefano brought in their first league title in 20 years against a Barcelona team that used to little bro them every year. He was banging stepovers on a pitch that looked like Pogba's brother dug them up to bury more hyenas. winners. Lewa could only dream of being this good technically. He'd still manage to find his teammates to create big chances for them, so you SofaScore merchants would love him too. He had incredible aerial prowess whenever crosses would come flying in. Ronaldo's leap for Juve, Messi's header against United in Rome, he had them all in the locker. In their first ever Champions League season, he spearheaded them all the way to a final. And despite going 2-0 down, he inspired them to a 4-3 win. As a result, he came extremely close to picking up a Ballon d'Or that year, narrowly beaten by a hero that we've discussed in previous lessons, Sir Stanley Matthews. Nevertheless, his impact was already there for all to see. He had now been given the nickname La Saeta Rubia, the blonde arrow, in reference to his pinpoint accurate shooting from virtually any distance. Whatever they saw in him before was just a drop in the ocean of his real abilities. This was like when Frieza was on Namek flexing his strength without even revealing his final form. The 1956-57 season was to end up as his best one ever, scoring 43 goals in 43 games, a 1-in-1 record that would see him pick up Europe's top scorer yet again, a cheeky La Liga title, and overall just be dominant in every department, to the point where he'd single-handedly revolutionized the entire public perception of Real Madrid. Now everyone wanted to go to Real Madrid to play alongside Di Stefano. It was only right that he'd pick up a well-deserved Ballon d'Or by one of the largest landslides you'll ever see, and yet he still wasn't done there. If I start to sound like a robot, my bad. But this guy managed to get European top scorer yet again in the 1958-59 season, winning yet another Champions League along the way. In the space of 3 years, he now had a hat-trick of golden boots, to go over a hat-trick of league titles and the small matter of a second Ballon d'Or. La Saeta Rubia was now the most feared striker on the continent, and even though they didn't win the league the next season, they'd go on to win their 5th European Cup final in a row, with Di Stefano scoring in every single one of those finals. When you take into account that by this point, he was playing a support role to Hungarian legend Puskás, his records become even scarier. Forget the stats though, it was a match between Real Madrid and Santos, the home of Prime Pele and Garrincha, that really showed the kind of levels we were operating with. Di Stefano was shining as Garrincha was anonymous, and Santos suffered a very rare defeat. He was loved so much in Spain at this point that the entire country virtually forced the Spanish FA to allow him citizenship to play for Spain and help a country who were desperate to win anything at all on the international level. There are no prizes for guessing what happened on his international debut, so I'ma just tell you. Of course he bagged a hat-trick in a 5-1 win over Netherlands. The way this guy would bat away defenders like they were nothing but common houseflies turned Spain from nobodies on the scene into immediate contenders as they stormed their way to qualification for the 1962 World Cup. But perhaps one of the biggest what-if stories in football history was to follow, as Di Stefano suffered a serious injury right before the tournament. He showed up with the squad just in case he could recover in time for the knockouts, but it wasn't to be, as Brazil put the final nail in the coffin as Spain finished bottom of their group. Now approaching his late 30s, the injuries began to take their toll, as you'd expect, and he no longer had the ability to drag Madrid through the mud, both literally and metaphorically. So after 11 seasons consisting of 8 league titles, 5 Champions Leagues and 308 goals in 396 games, his time at Madrid had come to an end. His legacy was already set in stone and he could leave there with his head held high. In 1964, he made his way to Espanyol to see out his career, and despite the massive decline in goals, he still helped them avoid relegation in back-to-back seasons before finally announcing his retirement just before his 40th birthday. So in the end, he had scored 487 goals in 669 games across his 22-year-long career. But as impressive as these numbers are, his impact went beyond the stats. Being the original King of Madrid and changing the entire trajectory of the club is what allowed him to earn so much money that they continue signing the best of the best players available from around the world, even as far as the Galacticos during the 2000s. He walked so Ronaldo could run. In fact, no, he jumped so Ronaldo could fly. He was the only player to be awarded the Super Ballon d'Or, and he used his vast experience to go on to become a coach, winning trophies for both Boca Juniors and River Plate, in addition to some more silverware as manager of Valencia and his beloved Real Madrid. Make no mistake about it, if Di Stefano played in 2024, he'd be the best striker in the world. If this is your first time watching him, hopefully you enjoyed. And even if you're already familiar with his game, I hope you learned something new in today's lesson. As always, leave a like on this video if you think it deserves it. Comment what players you want to see next from any era, and subscribe for new lessons every Monday. Class dismissed. Bosh.